Dominic King.
BBC Radio Kent.
Now, are grandparents afraid of saying no to childcare duties? Do you feel you would easily be able to say no to your older children about looking after their children? Or are you concerned you could be cut off? How much weekly childcare is enough for you to do? Let's hear from Daytime's parenting expert Kirsty Ketley.
Firstly, I think a lot of grandparents feel very obligated. They feel that it's their duty to help. And, many grandparents still feel that parental guilt that all as parents have with their grown-up children, especially if their grown-up children are struggling financially and perhaps can't afford to pay for childcare. So they do feel a sense of duty that they have to do it, even if they perhaps don't want to. Some grandparents simply just feel like they want to feel useful, that they want to feel needed, valued even. And if they say no, it might just make them seem a little less relevant, and therefore the worry comes about that they just won't end up seeing their grandkids. And then I think it's just really important to build up a relationship with your grandkids outside of childcare. And it's really important to remember that your role as a grandparent isn't any less significant in your grandchildren's upbringing or life because it comes in a different way, because it's not childcare. A special Sunday lunch, or maybe one day in the holidays, or they come to stay with you for a few days in the holidays. You can build a bond and have a relationship with them in a different way. It doesn't have to be about childcare.
Kirsty Ketley, so how can decisions over childcare potentially damage your relationship? What do you do about it? Teresha Young is Daytime's relationship expert, also with us this morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning to you, Dom. How are you?
Very well. How are you? Because I'm guessing half-term's still kicking in.
Absolutely. My 8-year-old daughter is breathing down my neck at the moment, so I could have done with some childcare support right now.
Now, this is a massive commitment, isn't it, for grandparents all through the working week. This could be another job for them, really.
It is, and exactly what Kirsty was saying there. Society has changed so much because what we need to realise is that grandparents are often juggling a lot these days. So saying no can be for a number of reasons. Some are still working, some are not necessarily of retirement age, and some may even be working beyond retirement age too. I mean, I think about my own mother, and I think, she has her own independent life. So she always does her best to help out with childcare for my daughter when needed. But she's not quite retirement age yet. She's still working. She has responsibilities outside of work, such as to her church. She has 2 other young grandchildren from my brother and his wife. And she's taking care of herself. She's getting her hair done. She's getting her nails done. She has more of a life than me. So I need to make sure that I respect her time. Life's looking very different when it comes to grandparent duties.
So in terms of managing expectations for all parties, that would be tough, I guess. But if someone is looking after your child for free, how much can you push back? I mean, does it make it all a bit more awkward?
This is where open and honest conversations come in, because sometimes what can happen is it becomes regular. So what might have started off as a one-off or an occasional favour slowly becomes the norm and something expected. Now, if it's starting to turn into custom and practice, so to speak, it's important to have a conversation with that person, with the grandparent, to say, okay, so how can we work with this going forward? Because just like what Kirsty was saying, these childcare arrangements often are laid with empathy. So this adult child might be a lone parent, for example, or struggling financially. So the grandparent really wants to be there and feeling really stretched and feeling really exhausted. So it's all about having that open, honest conversation with the grandparent to find out exactly what can work going forward and whether there is any sort of financial payment that might be of help and benefit.
Teresha, there must be so much pressure, though, for grandparents, because we know how expensive childcare can be. And actually, even trying to get a childcare place often in nursery and stuff is quite difficult, and certainly not for the whole week. They might think, well, if I don't step in, what will they do? And there's then that kind of parent guilt for their older children on the parent guilt that is a grandparent guilt for the younger children.
Yes, absolutely. You have that guilt. You have this generational belief that can kick in, because many grandparents were raised with the belief that you just help, no questions asked. However, if it's starting to feel like pressure, it's so important that we are transparent, because what will happen is that distance may start to grow and resentment might start to build up, even though that might not be in the grandparents' minds. But at the end of the day, you get that huffing like, oh, again, I just can't do that. So it's really important that these conversations do take place.
If your older kids cut you off, though, because you didn't do the childcare. And that's an extreme case, but we're hearing it is happening in certain places. Is that more about the fabric of the relationship that you already had in the first place, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And that's my first thought. What is the quality of the relationship between a grandparent and their adult child? Because for someone to feel that saying no could lead to feeling like they're being, quote unquote, punished and cut off from their grandchild, I would say that potentially points to something more tender or unresolved in their relationship. What can often happen is when it happens this way is that there may be something in the past that is being coming up for the adult child. Perhaps the grandparent wasn't emotionally supportive for them when they were growing up.
They often talk, don't they, about sometimes grandparents feel like they weren't as great as they could have been, so this is their second chance at doing it.
Exactly. So what that does is it gives them that feeling of, well, you wasn't there for me when I was younger, and you're not there for me now, and even more so, you're not there for my children. So you go into self-protection mode, and then you also go into protecting your children now because you don't want them to be exposed to the quote-unquote mistreatment or not being supported that you experienced.
Teresha Young is with us, daytime's relationship expert here on BBC Radio Kent, and want to pick up on some listener comments that are coming in. Katie says, I think one of the big issues here is grandparents taking care of children with additional needs. I know of many families, mine included, who have children with autism and challenging behaviour. The only adults who can care for those children are people they know well, trust and have a relationship with. But as parents, but as our parents age, they simply cannot keep up with meeting their grandchildren's needs. So there has to be some sort of understanding. I use a qualified professional babysitter with my children now. I only leave them a couple of hours once a month, but it's the only way that I, as a single parent, can get any respite. My parents are 70 now, and I cannot expect them to deal with the complexities of my children's condition. Rach has sent this in. I was extremely lucky that my parents had my children whilst I worked. Childcare was so expensive. I'm also in a position that as I run my own business from home, I can help friends out with their families as childcare is through the roof. I was brought up by my grandparents and my kids were, and I hope I will get to bring my grandkids up when it's my turn. But I do fear that with people working to an older age, this may become a thing of the past. And Alistair says, we love every moment of looking after our grandchildren. In fact, we'd love more. Teresha, lots of comments there, all very different. But I'm also thinking about the parent here who might feel actually, yes, they're asking their parents to do the childcare, but they might themselves feel a little pushed out because their grandparents are taking over that responsibility during the week, but they kind of have to because of needing to pay the bills.
Absolutely. So you can feel so torn in relation to how much time you're spending with your own child in comparison to the grandparent. And this is why striking that balance is really important. So where you can spend that quality time with your children, do it. Because what can happen is that not only are you at work paying the bills, for example, but then actually carve out time to spend quality time with that children so it can hopefully eliminate some of the guilt that you may be feeling. Because what can happen is that you bring work home, you're super stressed, your child is maybe on their device, their iPad, but actually carve out that intentional time so that you feel better about the situation.
Right, I want really to help. Final question with you. I want to really help a grandparent who's listening to this right now and wants to be able to say to their older kid, I cannot do as much childcare as you want me to do. How do you tackle that?
Yeah. Now, if the relationship with the adult child feels safe enough, it can really help to have a gentle, open conversation. Maybe something like, I love spending time with the kids and I want to support where I can. I'm starting to feel a bit stretched though. And we talk about what works for all of us. So it's not about rejection, it's about realigning that relationship.
Thank you so much for being with us. Really lovely to have you with us as always. Teresha Young, our relationship expert, and also our parenting expert, Kirsty Ketley, with their thoughts on that question. Are Kent's grandparents maybe afraid of saying no to childcare duties? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Keep the conversation going. 08000 321 333. Start with Kent on WhatsApp. Or you can email the show to dominic.king@bbc.co.uk.